This is about defending democracy. This is no longer Democrats versus Republicans. What do you want your kids to believe in? There must be give and take.
This is White Flag with Joe Walsh.
We're $33 trillion in debt because neither party has any interest in cutting government spending. Neither party has any interest in reforming government spending. We are $33 trillion in debt and growing, and by the time I'm done with this daily 7-minute take, that debt will have grown another few $100 million. We're $33 trillion in debt because people we send to Congress, Republican and Democrat, don't have the courage to tell the American people the truth. This has always been a big issue for me. It's why I ran for Congress way back when. The bankrupting of future generations. The truth is this: we are $33 trillion in debt because of health care costs for more and more Americans living longer and longer and longer. Now, that's a good thing, the fact that the American people are living longer and longer, and they're healthier and healthier. But those costs, the health care costs, the retirement costs, for all the American people who are living longer and longer, this is the single largest piece of the federal debt, of our federal debt, and it's the fastest growing piece. Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid, all the costs that we spend to take care of people, to take care of the health care of people, as they grow older and older. This is it. This is the debt. It's here. It's this piece of the pie. The entitlements, Social Security, Medicare, and Medicaid. That's it. That's the biggest piece of the debt. It's the fastest growing piece of the debt. And the second biggest and fastest growing piece of our federal debt is interest on our debt. That's it. And Republicans and Democrats don't want to talk about that. Republicans used to have more courage talking about Social Security, Medicare, and Medicaid, but they really don't anymore. Democrats never have. That's where our debt is. That's the truth. It's not welfare spending for low-income Americans. It's not aid to Israel. It's not money we spent to build a border wall. It's not defense spending. You could get rid of all of that tomorrow, and our $33 trillion debt would still be growing astronomically every second of every minute of every hour of every day, until this country has the courage to address these entitlement costs, Social Security, Medicare, and Medicaid. We will never do anything about our debt. And I can hear you out there. I can hear you arguing with me and disagreeing with me. But you can't disagree with that simple fact. The largest piece of our federal spending is what we call, you can call it something else, we call entitlement spending. The entitlements, Social Security, Medicare, and Medicaid primarily. It's the biggest piece of what the federal government spends money on by far, and it's growing the fastest by far. And when we hear our politicians talk about shutting down the government unless we get government spending, they're not talking about this. They can't touch that. That takes legislation to reform. When it comes to our entitlement spending, they're talking about all the not even the nickels and dimes. They're talking about the pennies, all the non-defense discretionary spending. That's what these Republicans mainly want to cut, which is completely disingenuous because it won't do anything to address our debt. If you care about our debt, the spending that has this country $33 trillion in debt is spending that they can't even cut this entitlement spending without major reform. And yet we threaten to cut that. We threaten to shut down the government over pennies. Look, this is the truth. And it's a good thing that Americans are living longer and longer. But we as a country have to have a real adult conversation about how we pay for all the health care it's going to take for all the Americans living longer and longer, all the health care and retirement costs. And I know, I hear you. I hear so many of you, but Joe, I paid into it. Don't call it an entitlement, Joe. I paid into it. Social Security and Medicare, I paid into it. Yeah, you did. Yeah, you did. But people my kids' age aren't going to touch it. They're not going to touch Social Security. They're not going to touch Medicare. These programs are due to go bankrupt. And all of you good, decent Americans who paid into it, you are averaging getting back almost 4 times. You are right now, the average American right now on retirement will get back 4 times what they put into it, both Medicare and Social Security. Yeah, you paid into it, but you're getting back 4 times what you paid into it on average. Now, right now, retirees are. This is what drives our debt. Call them what you want. Social Security, Medicare, and Medicaid, and there are others. If you don't want to call them entitlements, don't. Call them what you want to call them. But they are the biggest piece of our debt and the fastest growing piece of our debt. And one day this country will have the courage to reform these programs. One day this country will have the courage to raise the retirement age. One day this country will have the courage to tax wealthier Americans on their Social Security and Medicare benefits. One day we will talk about reforming these programs. We will talk about reforming Social Security so that younger Americans can privately save for their retirement. One day we'll talk about things like this. But right now, we don't have the guts or the courage to talk about it. So we lie to the American people and pretend that we're doing something about the debt when we're really not. Because we're afraid to touch these mandatory spending programs. It's a shame. Hey, let's make it a good week. Joe Walsh here, former Congressman Joe Walsh. Joe Walsh White Flag, that's one word, @gmail.com. That's my email, Joe Walsh White Flag @gmail.com. Shoot me an email. Be brave.
Thank you for listening. Remember to listen, share, and follow White Flag with Joe Walsh on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and everywhere great podcasts are found. And be sure to leave a 5-star review. This has been White Flag with Joe Walsh.